Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad you joined the Hudl. I'm always trying to connect fans to the fundamentals of football, and tonight I have special guest Brent Rollins from On3 and UGAsports.com, and we're going to be talking all things defensive secondary. We're also going to be looking at defensive personnel, and I'm going to be breaking down who I think the starting 11 is going to be, along with those first rotators. We're also going to be looking at Coach Smart's press conference and looking at just all his comments that he made and trying to break down certain things that he said to get a better advantage point of what he's talking about. I want you to stick around because Brent's coming in after the break. Stay tuned. This is Coach Speaks segment with Chris Hayes. As you know me as Coach Hayes Hudl. I have a special guest tonight. Brent is coming to me from UGAsports.com, On3, as well as the fact, as most of you have probably seen him with See Ball, Get Ball with the David Pollock. And I'm glad I have him on the show for this main reason, is I finally got a buddy in crime here as an X's and O's guy that's with me tonight, shoulder to shoulder, breaking down the defensive secondary for the University of Georgia this year, talking all things about what they've done with the second scrimmage under their belt now. I appreciate you being with me tonight. Glad to have you in. Brent, and how you doing this evening?
Thanks, appreciate it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to always talk ball. Like the X's and O's part to me is one that like that to me is what the beauty of football is about. Because even I, as a player in high school, like I was 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing, but I could play the game really well because of that and the ability to think the game. So I love that part of the game as much as anything.
That's awesome. Well, I really enjoyed watching the product that you're creating with David and just, having the time to be on UGA Sports. I know you've done a lot of breakdowns with Dane and just seeing all the things. That's how you and I actually connected, because I think we were just sharing thoughts back and forth. And I've always, as I've started this platform, wanted to have you on the show. And I'm so glad that I could have you here. First thing I was wanting to let my, viewers and people who are watching the show tonight about you, Brent, is that I noticed when I was putting everything in that I saw professor by day. A lot of people think this is what we do full time. Realistically, it's not necessarily the truth. So what I was just going to ask, so the viewers could see and kind of hear about what's going on with your sort of like an origin story, is just tell them a little bit about yourself. What got you into this? Where did it start at, and what you're currently doing now?
So in terms of like the PhD after my name and the Twitter and all that sort of thing, it is a legitimate thing. Like I do have a PhD, and my PhD is actually in pharmacy administration and marketing.
Nice.
So I'm a pharmacist by trade. I went to pharmacy school in Ohio and then looked at West Virginia University and everywhere south. So I ended up at UGA for graduate school and was a graduate student and got my PhD at UGA and sort of worked as a pharmacist, but got into academia. So I am a professor by day. That is my day job. And that's one that likely it would take a lot of blowing up of things to a whole nother realm
Yes.
for me to give that up and actually do that. But no. So I do a lot of various things as it relates to research in healthcare and healthcare consumer behavior, and I've written a couple textbooks, and
nice.
So it is a day job, but it's one that, like, my wife jokingly says I'm not a real doctor, like I'm like Ross on Friends in a way.
Yeah.
But in terms of the football stuff, my dad's a high school. This is his first year actually. It would have been his 50th year coaching high school football.
Wow.
But he fully retired because the head coach retired as well. And so, you grow up the son of a coach. Like that's how I was taught the game. That's how I understand the game is thinking in that manner. And then, I went to college, pharmacy school, and then graduate school. And I stayed in it just from watching their stuff, watching through Hudl and commenting on his things. I would help some kids out that did, some QB training on the side, things like that, just staying in the game. But then right around, say, 2014, I saw an article from Peter King in his Monday Morning Quarterback, and it was about Pro Football Focus.
Cool.
And just the sort of genesis of that company. And I looked into it, and they had a tryout thing, and I was like, hey, I could do this. I could, analyze these games and look at it and do it. And I wanted to get into kind of the writing of it because it was something I was thinking about. And so I was able to get the job with Pro Football Focus. Like when we first started, I want to say they only had when I first started in 2014, it was the first year they did college grading. They only had like half of the NFL in terms of clients.
Right.
Few college teams. We used spreadsheets and like old school stuff to get things done, and did all kinds of different things in the beginning as that thing grew, and it became the monster that it is today eventually.
Right.
And as over time that's kind of lessened, but with eventually Rivals, with UJ Sports, and then now obviously it won 3 with the merger, but there was a PFF and Rivals had an agreement that they could kind of use the data. So I knew Roddy was in town, and I reached out to Roddy. I'm like, hey, I can show you how to use this stuff, what it means, that kind of thing.
Right.
And we had conversations, and that led to the Film Don't Lie thing that I initially did in a written form with Dane, and then we turned it into video, and it's kind of grown from there. And then, happened to get the chance with my next door neighbor, Mr. Pollock, who needed to he was wanting to get back into things, and he started it, and then he was like, all right, this is not, I don't want to talk by myself. And I was like, sure, I'll help you out. So last year I was like, sure. So we watched all the games, did, kind of commented on the games. That was, I will say, that was a whole different world to get used to.
I bet.
Because previously it was just watching Georgia and writing about Georgia, but now you got to watch them all, and you got to think and look and know about them all, and not be an idiot, by the way. That's the other thing. Yeah. So it's just kind of grown from there, and I just enjoy it. I love the game. I love everything about football and what it means. So that's my origin story, I guess you could say. That's
awesome. I've told everybody that I've had on the show that I've talked to, the awesome ability of what we do is the networking and learning people's storylines and understanding and getting to know people better in that regard. And what a better segue for you to be able to look at this partnership and to start this up, to have David Pollock, right next door to you, coming in and stepping in to be that partner for you. I think that's an awesome partnership. I think what you and Dane do with the Film Don't Lie, obviously I'm a fan of that, but I'm also a fan of you for what you do on the professional level as well, because I am currently pursuing my doctorate, looking at it from an educational leadership standpoint. So I'm going through research, and I don't want to geek everybody out here, but when you look at the quantitative measures of what you do metrically when you're doing the PFF, all I'm looking for data wise is the consistency, that it sticks from year to year, to see those trend values that you want to see from a scientific measurement. Really, I mean, you take a sport and you apply numbers to it, you want to see those trends stay consistent. And that's the one thing that I've loved about PFF for the most part. I feel like that I've seen that consistency, and something, of course, being your baby, something that you've worked with, and I know you take a lot of pride in, that is very important to me as well. So just to hear that is just really unique, and having people in the viewers that see us and what we're doing right now just have a better understanding of where we come from. I think it's an essential part to knowing what we're about and what we're trying to do. So appreciate that information going forward. Let's talk about some the defensive backfield. And uniquely, when you look at the linebacker core, that's been something talked about on the defensive side of the ball pretty much through the spring and through the summer, and we knew what we were getting coming back based off last year's play, is pretty much how dynamic they are. But when you look at the defensive backfield this year, what I'm thinking of is we're trying to fit the pieces to the puzzle, because we know the players we have back there. We know the blue chip mentality. We know the ceilings of these players. We've got transfer portal kids coming in. We've got kids that are growing up and developing in front of our face. And we do have a few seasoned veterans back there, even though one may be a little bit on the younger side, where one is seasoned all the way up into his senior year. So what I was wanting to get from you, Brent, is just your idea. If we were to be looking at the defensive secondary, and I have to include the nickels in there as well, because when you're looking at shoulder safeties, the corners, the nickel is an essential part of the passing defense. So we're going to look at the nickel position as well, as most of you know is called the star position. And what I was wanting to know, do you think they look good right now as a whole, or are there any flaws that we could suspect from this group just based off the potential of what's out there?
I think it's the biggest question mark of the season, actually, in terms of Georgia's, like from a unit standpoint, in terms of, I don't know what I'm going to get. I think I know it, even though, like from the edge standpoint and the defensive interior, even though you don't necessarily know the names,
right? I
know what type of play I'm going to get. For the secondary, I think it's such a, I do think they're going to limit the mental mistakes just because that's what they do and they coach it so well.
Right.
But just the dynamics of the secondary, and you mentioned the star position. Like Georgia's a 4-2-5 base.
Right.
Like that's what they are. And that's, so like the nickel is the, on the field 80% of the time, 75% of the time, something like that. And it's created this very unique dynamic to me, watching Kirby Smart's defense evolve over time. Because you have to decide, do I want a player at that spot that is a really good cover player, but maybe not as good as a run defender? Or do I want a really good run defender that's not as good as a coverage player?
Right.
And when they've been at their best in the secondary, it's when they've had a blend of both there. Like Tyke Smith, the year he had Bullard in both of those two players in that kind of role, they'd be able to play. Those were the best combinations of be able to cover, especially man-to-man in the slot, and also be physical in the run game. Tyke, for his size, was really good as a run defender. I think that's as much of what got him drafted as anything.
Agree.
But that's the question mark for me with this team is, like, I feel like they got three corners that are going to play and rotate and be out there as long as they stay healthy.
Right.
They've got one big time, to me, potential All-American type safety.
Right.
The other spot, okay, I feel okay, and kind of a under talked about thing is that Dan Jackson actually, other than a few big plays, he just wasn't very good last year.
Right.
So, but that star position, can Janelle Aguero be a both coverage player as well as a line of scrimmage player?
Right.
I don't know. And that's to me that's got to come from the growth standpoint. And because I've talked about this on like some radio shows and some other things.
Right.
The way that teams, especially the good teams, attack them on first down in the passing game. It was something like Alabama, Mississippi, Ole Miss, Tech, and then Notre Dame. Those QBs were 80% completion at, over 600 yards, like no picks, only one sack on first down.
Right.
So those good QBs are going to attack them when they're in, when Aguero's in the field at the star. When when you have guys that aren't rush type defensive tackles. So it's an area of question mark, all of it to me to see. That's for sure.
That is very unique when you have someone like Tyke, like you were mentioning a while ago, because it's so hard as a defensive coordinator or a defensive staff in general when you're looking at a guy that basically has to play that hybrid that typically used to be in a 4-3 when you had the Sam linebacker that basically plays now that nickel position. He's the strength guy to the number 2. He's always going to be that guy that you've got to work to the force flat. He's an outside leverage defender. He's got to work through number 2 receivers, but he's also got to cover those twitchy number 2 receivers as well. In our case, like a Zachariah Branch or Kobe White that would be running at him, which hopefully he's getting plenty of practice with those ones against him right now doing that job. Because I agree with you on that, Brent. It's tough when you've got a hybrid player that may be a better run defender than a pass defender. And, based off what you're showing with those metrics there, that really does show, that just goes to show, well, who's going to step up and show that, hey, they can cover as well as they're defending the run. And again, being a question mark, I know that we're looking at a lot of different position players there. Have you heard of anyone that's really jumping into that spot to maybe push Janelle at all? I know we've got a lot of people over those 3 positions, free, strong, and nickel. Is there anybody else there that we've heard about in that position?
I don't think so. I mean, it's one of the things where I think that's actually the beauty of the 12-team playoff. Is that you've got a little bit of time to figure out
to evolve it.
What you can and can't do, as long as you take care of business against the at Tennessee game for Georgia. Like, that's a huge, ginormous game just because it's Gunner's really first true road test. And but you've done traditionally well against Tennessee and Heupel. So take care of business there, and you can kind of see what you have. Like, can is it Dinkins, the Dinkins kid?
Yep, Dinkins.
Can he play for you? The one, like the Maddox kid that transferred from UAB. Like, you hear his name kind of brought up and see, hey, he's running with the ones this day, twos this day, it's back and forth, that kind of thing. But for me, watching his tape, I was just like, I thought he was like more true, strong safety in the box type guy versus somebody who could be a coverage defender as well. So maybe you let KJ Bolden be more the coverage guy. You let him be more of a true free safety. I don't know. Yeah, I want to see it at the SEC level because I think he even got picked on at UAB in certain instances. So that's one that's a big question mark for me. I don't think you're getting anything from the kid from Miami, the Harris kid. Yeah. The Branch brother, Zion Branch, can he be somebody that can play back there? At least be. I think that's the thing for me is, can you at least find a free safety that's going to not be a problem? It's not going to be a negative, because the one thing about secondary play, much like offensive line play, to me, it is the biggest one thing I talk a lot about. It's the biggest weak link system. where on the defense.
Yeah.
If you got one that's just a below average player that can be targeted, you as an offensive coordinator, all these great offensive coordinators, they're going to find ways to pick on you all day, every day. If you've got, like, Daniel Harris was a weakness that towards the end of the season, and teams found a way to get one-on-ones and get matchups against him. So, I don't know. That to me it's the one area where I think I know what I'm going to get from Gunnar Stockton for the most part. I think I know what I'm going to get from the offensive line and defensive lines. Definitely know what you're going to get from the linebacker group, like running backs. Even no matter who's there, no matter what's playing, I think I know what you're going to get. This is the one where I'm just like, I don't know. I got to see it.
Yep. Very well said. And honestly, I feel the same way. I wish I could put sort of a staple in there and just say, hey, this is the guy I think that really fits the bill the best. And it comes down to the play with what you're seeing evolve through the fall. Because, I think Zion Branch had a little bit of heat. And as he came into the spring and was doing a lot of good things, Adrian Maddox, I think, has got more of that hype into the fall. But, Rayshawn Dinkins is someone that I know is coming along. And this kid didn't even come in as a mid-year. He's just come in the summertime. And I hear got a lot of hype through these scrimmages and doing a lot of things that maybe even getting some reps with the twos. And that may be the reason why, because he does have the ability. I know he's a thumper. And, looking at him from the standpoint, can you cover SEC receivers in the slot too? That's a big difference. That's a big jump from a high school level. So I agree with you on that going forward, but good stuff there. You really answered my question about Janelle Aguero. So what I wanted to do is just one last little tidbit. Who do you think is going to line up shoulder to shoulder with KJ? If KJ's at free, do you think Jacorey Thomas has served his time to be that strong safety look on the other side? Or do you think there's going to be somebody else pushing for that spot?
It feels like just sort of history of Kirby in a way that the veteran guy who's been there is the one who, at least game one, snap one, is there, and that you see him there. And then it's kind of hey, I'm going to give you it. This is your opportunity. You're going to play until you play your way out of it, kind of thing. Or somebody else demonstrably plays better. But there's also the practice element to this.
Exactly.
He puts such an emphasis on in terms of being able to play on Saturdays, that how you practice and things like that. And that's when you look at, so you got Branch that's new, Maddox that's new, the Harris kid from Miami that's new, Dinkins freshman, some others. How good are they mentally? Yeah. Because this is one of the, I remember long stories talking to coaches and various people inside the building where, hey, this kid's the most talented kid, but he's just not ready mentally yet. This other guy, super talented, not ready mentally yet. Tyree Stevenson was one name to me that was always brought up as hey, he wasn't ready. It took time to get there ready mentally, because it's not like it's just easy defense, go play man, go cover this guy type thing. It's so much of the matching principles that they have defensively. The one thing that I'm very curious to see is, especially on third down, because Georgia's been historically a great third down team, one of the best in the country. Even last year, they were really good at on third down, getting teams off the field. Right. But do you play the three corners, much like we saw against Missouri when Bolden was kind of doing things from the slot, and you saw Kamari Lassiter go into the slot, play him, and then they played Everett that also got some time in that game. Right. And Lassiter went inside. Do you do that with Harris, Everett, and Daniel and Ellis Robinson, right? And play the three corners and let those guys just cover. That's because last year, what we see in those type situations, you brought KJ Bolden in the game at safety, and you put Malachi Starks down. I hope they don't do that with KJ Bolden. Because I think it took his toll on Malachi Starks, and you saw him get beaten in areas just because of the sort of burden that he had to shoulder playing so much, and in that role, I'd rather just play KJ Bolden at safety and bring in the cover guys to play underneath. Because, like I said a little bit ago, I think KJ Bolden can be All-American, first team All-American type safety, and I think he's got that potential first round pick type written all over him.
That's nice. Well said. And honestly, I think fits a great switch up to what you would look like in practice when you're not getting what you want in pass coverage with the nickel, to look at running a 3-corner system and doing something like that. I mean, it's a great idea and something that I would think of, try to think of as well, because if you're just not getting it done and you're having no success on first down plays and even on third down and manageable or third down plays where you need to get the defense off the field and the stars not getting the job done, that may be a route that they have to take. So well said on that. We talk about KJ Bolden and what his potential is, obviously, but I want to ask you real quick, who do you think is going to be that blue collar kid we have in the secondary this year who just shows consistency throughout the year in the run pass defense and just does his job? Because, a lot of them corners are going to be playing a lot of cover 2 trap, and they're going to be coming up on the flat force defend as well to make tackles. That's the reason why they're out there. I just wanted to know who you thought would be that person that maybe not has all the glorified stats, but just goes out there and does their job this year consistently. And you're saying, man, what a great year they had, even though maybe their stats wasn't necessarily off the charts, but just did a phenomenal job all year long. Because that's something you want to see in the defensive backfield, is people that are consistent.
Well, I think that's kind of what Dalen Everett was a year ago, because there were times where he was just picked on.
Yes,
and picked on a lot, and I think it was almost like 60-something percent, 67% completion that he gave up into his coverage area, but he made big plays, and he made, obviously, the Texas games were a whole different animal in terms of him and playmaking in those situations. I still think he has a level to get to that can be more of a 50% completion allowed, more plays on the ball.
Right.
But there's always been like that little sort of turn of the hips, little things that he does that it's like, okay, just be a little bit quicker, quicker, see it a little bit quicker, things like that. So I think he can get to another level and be that consistent, because when you look at the transition over the past few years where you'd had, hey, I've got sort of cornerback 1, and then the young guy plays cornerback 2, the cornerback 1 leaves. Next year, all right, Ringo, now you're the guy the next year, and then Lasser's the younger guy, Lasser's the guy, Everett, all that sort of thing. Like I expected a little bit more out of Everett last year to step up and be sort of true CB1. I think he maybe does that this year. And it just took maybe 1 year later than Kamari Lasser ended up being sort of a different animal in a way.
Right.
So I think he's the one that answers that question, that Mr. Consistent, always there, leadership. And the thing with the stats part is they just don't get a lot of interceptions. It's not, they don't insanely play the ball. It's not something they've done even historically at a high rate. And it's one that, pass rush, I think, has to affect that for them to get turnovers, but they just, would they have like 6 or 7 maybe?
Yeah. I don't think they had a ton.
8 maybe.
Yeah. So, you look at that too, because they run with the hip so much trying to stay in man, they have safeties over the top. The safeties should be making the interceptions. That's where you're going to see the INTs come from. We're looking at more PBUs from that defensive back position. You're exactly right. I would like them. I know they have to run with hips, and there's a lot of different ways that it's taught. You know that as well. To never turn your hat to the ball, because if you turn your hat to the ball and you lose distance between your guy, that small little half-yard gap is the difference of a 50-50 ball being completed versus it being PBU'd, where you're trying to get the hand up through the crease point as they reach up for the ball. You're watching their eyes, watching their hands. And I get that. I know a lot of people don't understand that. Or like, why don't they turn around to the ball? I know they're getting ball calls, but a lot of times if they're trying to stay on the hip, it's really hard for a defensive back to be able to push into something, because the minute you turn the hat, that makes you lose ground between you and the offensive player, and that could be the difference of a completed ball or just a PBU. But we've seen it plenty of times. We saw it in the Ole Miss game back in 2023 when Dalen really had a bad hip cut where he turned his hips too late, like you were talking about. But Javon Bullard bailed him out over the top, making the pick, and that's the kind of deal you want to see. But you also want to see your corner in phase with him on the hip too. So uniquely, those two things run hand in hand. And I agree with you on Dalen. I think he's exactly the same person I was thinking about when I formed this question for you. So I'm really appreciative of that, because I think he's someone that we got to count on this year. And the Texas games alone, I think, put him on the map to show, because I agree, he still has a little bit of ceiling potential to reach. And I think he fits that profile this year. Anything to add to that?
Well, I was to say the point of how people, hey, why aren't you looking for the ball? I had a conversation with one of the coaches once, and it sort of came third hand, I guess, in a way, from Nick Saban. And basically, Saban is like, hey, I teach this and we do it this way because playing the ball is just something that's innate oftentimes.
Yep.
And kids just have it or they don't.
Right.
And you find, like a Tyrann Mathieu that's always around the ball, knows how to play that. It's just an innate skill set that, hey, as opposed to trying to force that, let me try something that I can teach that is more coachable, teachable, and can be consistently done in that realm where you're, hey, looking for hands, swatting or punching up, all that sort of stuff versus looking for the actual football. So that was, I think, an interesting viewpoint that someone told me once about where that came from with Saban.
It's you're right. It's instinctive, and it's something that I've only coached maybe 2 or 3 kids that had the ability to do it. Most of the time I was really just like, I would rather you be able to recover and get on the hip and stay in phase and do it, and have a PBU and a breakup than necessarily trying to turn and find the ball. Let your safety come over the top and help you on those. That's what we're looking for anyway. We're not leaving you out to dry. We're going to try to help you as all we can in most case scenarios, unless you're on the island to a backside 3x1 or something. But, uniquely, it's very cool to be able to hear you say that as well, because there's so many people out there that don't understand that process. And to me, that just changes the level of a DB going from, someone that is of elite status, having the ability not only to, have great cover skills, great wingspan, good hip turns, being able to rotate really well, get into phase with the receivers, and being able to stay and understand how to react with the football instead of reacting to the receiver itself and not causing pass interference situations. I mean, that just takes an elite talent. It really does across the board. And you're right with Coach Saban saying something like that, considering I'm sure he's coached plenty of them, to see that, that is something that's kind of an outlier or a unicorn to an extent, to have someone that has that instinctive ability to find the ball as well as do all those other things we mentioned. Good stuff right there, brother. What I was going to ask you, do you think, I know we talked about KJ Bolden, do you think we have any all SEC honors at the end of the year? Do we have a defensive back worthy to gain that recognition this year?
He's one, obviously, there. I think if Everett takes the step that I expect him to take, he could be. Ellis, obviously, he's a super talented kid. We just haven't seen him on the field a lot. I'm curious and want to see him on the field, because
Me too.
I know, especially towards the end of the year, I was not fond of seeing 7 on the field like many, and it was more about effort than anything else. Watching. But the thing is all of them have unique abilities, skill sets. But the one that I'm curious to see if he does get time, just because of how much I remember watching him in high school.
Yes,
was Demello Jones.
Oh, good one.
Just because the quicks that kid had, could he be somebody that is that third down cover guy in the slot?
Nice.
That plays that role. I'm not sure. I would love to go see it for myself and see it on the field. But that's one that I'm intrigued. I don't know that he's not going to get the time to be an all SEC caliber, but in terms of a big impact on the team, maybe. But outside of that, I don't know that I see anybody, and that's where it's like, okay, depth. Where the depth in that room, and that sort of the totality of that room, those 5 positions is probably as thin as it's been, because you look at AJ Harris is playing at Penn State, Singletary's playing at Arkansas, Julian Humphreys at A&M now. You got all these guys that were in your room that are now in other big time program rooms, and it's hurt the depth, and and you might have to play the young. You don't want to have to play the young guys, but that's also one where so much of that's one area where, like, if you look at the snap leaders every year on the defensive side of the football, it's those 5 guys.
Yeah,
because they just don't rotate them much.
Right.
And maybe playing the corners and rotating the corners a little bit like they have, that's where you only get that little bit of substitution, but that's going to be their group. I'm curious to see who the dime, how they go when they go dime. And last year they bring KJ in, him and Dan at safety, and Malachi's the extra sort of down defender. Who's that guy this year? Yes. All SEC, it's Bolden and Everett. Those are the 2, and outside of that, it's a maybe.
It's a maybe. And, honestly, I think that's just true factual information. I think a lot of people might have these high hopes and what we want to see from Ellis, but it's just like with anything else. I want to be able to get tape on all these guys. I want to be able to finally see a game where I have, 20 reps of Ellis Robinson playing man zone coverage and just being able to break his stuff down. Same thing with Demello too. Same thing from some of the linebacker core, and same thing with up front with the D lineman as well. But, I'm sitting here looking at the personnel that you have here. I mean, you saw Dominick Kelley had a really good spring. I know that he showed out a little bit with some throws that was going on and got people excited about his play, but I think he's still got time to play. I do think right now you're looking at a 5-person rotation with the 3 that we're looking to, kind of rotate in with Harris and Dalen Everett, and then you've got Ellis Robinson and Demello Jones rotating in, as much as they have been. I've noticed, and I'm sure you've probably seen through scrimmage notes and just looking at pictures that they've put out, that you'll see like Ellis Robinson out there over the top, and you see the starting offensive line and Gunnar Stockton out there, so he's going against the ones, so we know that he's getting reps. We know that they're pushing each other, but like when you said, you've got maybe 5 guys pushing for 2 spots, and they're rotating a lot. Maybe that gives you the opportunity, and that may feel like they're feeling like there's some positiveness there with possibly going in as that nickel and cover situations and have 3 corners on the field at the same time, leaving KJ at free safety and not fooling with him coming down to be the star. I really agree with you on that tremendously. As I look at all the defensive backs and, we talk about a lot of different things, I think you're right. As what you hit on to start with is is just a very unique stat in line that with the people that have left in the portal and with the people we have brought in, it seems to me we've gotten really heavy in the safety department, but yet on the corners where, we've lost some people, and we're looking at the dynamics of what all those guys are. And again, being the fact that there's just unproven out there. We know their potential, their ceiling potential, but just like I said, not having enough tape on them to give you any logistic to say these are the 3 guys we want, or these are the 2 guys we want consistently, because they're producing. And the main thing you're going to see, Coach Smart wants the fact he wants consistency throughout each one. He wants physical toughness. He wants you to compete, and he's getting that, I know, because right now we've heard great notes from the previous 2 scrimmages, one really good for the defensive side of the ball, one for the offensive side of the ball. And it's not going without the fact that they're not at least giving these guys the opportunity to produce, because when you get limited reps, you know this as well, and you're going out for a scrimmage with limited reps, by God, the reps you get, you better execute. You better go out there and show out, because if you don't, then that gives you probably more reason that you're going to be going with the 2s and the 3s later on down the road. So
he demands it. He demands it unlike any. I've been to tons of different practices in around the Southeast. There's no one that demands intensity, effort, physical play like Kirby Smart. There's just not.
Yep. And well said there, my friend. Last thing before I let you go, brother. If you had your pick of who plays the 2 corner positions, who's lined up at free safety and strong safety, your thought process off the hip, who would be your, now we're not even talking about the nickel right now. I just want to know your 4 shell over the top. Who would the 4 be that you would like to see out there?
I actually think day 1 you're going to see Ellis and Everett be the corners. Jacorey Thomas is 1 safety and KJ is the other.
You think?
I think that's what it's going to end up being.
Yeah, that's a good call, and I like that. You think Janelle's going to be at star?
I do.
Yeah.
Until he plays his way out of there. But think about last year. He was a 1st and 2nd down player.
Yeah. I
don't know that, unless it was a short yardage situation, I don't know that he really had much of any snaps on 3rd down. And that kind of shows what they think about his ability to cover guys.
Yes. Very well said. Like I said, we'll just have to see as we go through this, Brent. I know it's going to be a process, really looking at a lot of different position groups the same way, but we know that the ceiling of these guys being a high blue chip capacity and seeing the potential of what they bring, I think that's an excitement that, I know being a previous coach of having a team that is really good and has great potential to be able to go out there. And I think Kirby Smart and his team, I think he likes where he's at, coming in as a preseason number 5, kind of flying in under the radar with if you want to quote unquote an unproven talent in Gunnar Stockton. Everybody's, I think, kind of looking at him and just sort of undersizing what his capabilities are. I think that makes for a special group this year, and something I think as the chatter goes on, I think unfortunately we're not going to be under the radar very long, because if we go out and show out against these 2 FBS groups, it's going to be prime time in Neyland Stadium against Tennessee, and all of a sudden that being under the radar things, probably we're going to have to kick those those heels to the side and ready to lock and load and get after those volunteers. But anyhow, long story short, I appreciate you, Brent, for being on the show tonight, man. You give me a lot of good quality content, and anything you'd like to add there as far as we're talking about the defensive backfield, but also too, I'd love for everybody who's watching the show to be able to find you on YouTube and what you're a part of, if you could just share your handles out there, where can they find you at?
So I put it on the screen there. That's the Twitter thing. I guess I'm always going to call it Twitter, at Brent Rollins, PhD. But see ball, get ball with David Pollock. If you just that's the YouTube thing that's going to be consistent Monday, Wednesdays, and then after the games on Saturday nights, just kind of talking about everything, not just Georgia. I'm still going to be writing and doing some variations of the Film Don't Lie stuff with Dane in video form. I don't know exactly how just yet because of the way my schedule's be a little different, but I'll find a way to discuss. And if not, folks need to go join the dog vent, and I'll always be talking about things on there. But I do think in general, because of all the newness that we're talking about, of these guys that you've seen that are highly recruited and the ability, and you just haven't got to see them, that makes this season a very, hey, let's just see what it's like.
Yes.
Because for the past 3 to 4 years, kind of know almost exactly what you have, and it's just a matter of, do you play well enough and execute? Now you just want to see it. What's it look like? What's this guy look like? What's this new guy look like in the freshman class that keeps getting talked about, and the receiver room? Hey, what's it like when you got 5 or 6 receivers that are NFL caliber guys? You're going to get to see it this year, I think.
Exactly. Well said, Brent, across the board, man. I can't thank you for your time. We've been talking now, it seems like, for a year, being able to link up and be able to talk some ball. And it's been great to have you on the show tonight. I appreciate your time and efforts and what's going on with you. Wish you well in the future. And tell David next time you're on the show with him, Coach Hayes says hello, and wish you the best as you go forward.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Georgia Sports Autographs is built by collectors for collectors. They know what fans want because they've been in your shoes, hunting for that perfect piece, the right signature in the right spot. At every signing, Georgia Sports Autographs make sure it's done right, using the proper ink, following best practices, and paying attention to every detail so you end up with a product you'll be proud to display. They've already worked with many of Georgia's top athletes, and their network gives them access to just about anything you can imagine. If you don't see it listed, don't assume it can't be done. Chances are they can get it for you. Georgia Sports Autograph tests themselves with every event, always improving, always delivering for the ultimate addition to your collection. Trust the team that treats every autograph like its own. Georgia Sports Autographs, where every signature tells a story. I really appreciate Brent joining the show, and now have the opportunity to take on all those people who have been in the chat, leaving questions for me. I appreciate everybody who's joined the huddle tonight, and continually, I want you to make sure that you're putting your questions and comments and concerns in that chat room. I will be entertaining a lot of those questions towards the end. Currently, like I said, we're looking at basically just a little over a week until game day. We've got some games this weekend, which is going to be great to be able to sit down with a nice cold beverage and be able to watch watch the game again on the big screen, but also too the excitement of what it's going to be, bringing the potential and the ceiling that me and Brent were talking about into next Saturday's game, and seeing these guys that we really want to see play to get some tape on, to be able to reach the potential we want to see. Coach Smart is beginning to circle the wagons. I noticed there was a lot of optimism on the front end before the first scrimmage, and obviously we got a second scrimmage now that's been played out, and I've noticed he's kind of retracted a little bit and gone back into sort of evil Coach Kirby mode, where he's basically just trying to circle those wagons. He's trying to put in perspective, hey, we've got some the hay to put into the barn. We're going to be doing some polishing, but we are also still got some guys who are fighting in a phone booth for those one spot. Now, when it looks like the FBS, the two teams that we play out of the gate, in Marshall and Austin Peay, I think that we're going to see a lot of rotations. Now, you want to say you got the starting group, your starting 11, a seat at the table, but I still think you're going to see a lot of rotations through these two games, because they're still trying to find the right fits, especially when you're looking at package situations for first and second down, where you've got third down situations for third and short, third and long, whether you've got passing situations and you want your nickel coverage with an extra guy in that may not be the actual nickel that plays on first and second down, to be able to look at, any of those situations. They'll be able to rotate those guys in. They'll be able to see some good things. And just like Brent talked about, who knows, they might go to a 3-corner system, and it's it's a passing situation. But that's, they may be also evaluating, hey, can that corner, if it actually is a run on third down and they surprise you and it's not a passing situation, can he fight through a number 2 receiver and come up and leverage an outside force defense and turn everything back inside and maybe even possibly make a tackle? So there's a lot of different rotational factors we can talk about all day long and speculate to. But I do think as we move through, and Coach Smart has really spoken highly on all the people that was asked about, but uniquely enough, there are some really special talents that I think we're going to be seeing over the next week and a half that we've been hearing sort of these little whispers about, that's going to come to fruition next Saturday against Marshall and even the following week against Austin Peay. So what I'm going to do real quickly is in this second presser that Coach Smart did after scrimmage 2, there was a couple of things I wanted to take from this. I don't want to go dive deep too far into it, but I also want to, and the reason why is because I've got a defensive personnel breakdown that I'm going to be doing post these 2. So I wanted to break these 2 things down just to give you a little talk to and let you see and understand kind of what they mean by this. I think it's really cool. One of them is just tagged to just game maintenance in general. As a coach, this is something I think is highly vital, something that I looked at as well. And then he's going to talk a little bit about the defensive backs, and I want to be able to explain what I think and why he used sort of his response to help promote someone that's not being talked about as much, that still is going to be a very vital component to our defensive secondary. So here's the first one of Coach Kirby talking about the middle 8.
Kirby, a little bit of a game management question. There's been attention, I think especially in the NFL, about the middle 8 section, and I'm wondering how much you all look at that. Obviously the Notre Dame game was kind of decided score-wise. Yeah. How much do you all look at that? Do you think it has kind of outsized importance? And like situationally, I know you practice 2-minute offense, but how do you account for the middle 8, that idea?
Yeah, since I came to Georgia, Mel Tucker was on our staff. We talked about it. It was a big NFL thing at that time, but don't think we had the 2-minute warning per se, which everything was 2-minute. It just wasn't a 2-minute warning. But we've kept a stat since we've been here every year, and we show it every Monday who won the middle 8. And the middle 8 it's not any more important now than it was then. We talked about it for a long time, and we've won it in a lot of games and we've lost it in some games. But it's crazy, the statistics between one year everybody talks about turnovers. Well, that's the greatest indicator of who wins. The next year it's explosive plays. That's the greatest indicator of what determines who wins games, is who has more explosive plays. Both of those are huge indicators. And then there's the belief that the middle 8 is the greatest indicator of who wins games. And statistically, you could go year to year, and it's just very thin margins between the difference in who wins games over those 3 factors. So middle 8, you could say, is just as critical as those. You're trying to double possession people. It's why a lot of people defer in the first half to get a double possession. It's a lot of strategy in it. There's a lot more people going for it on 4th down, closer to half, to keep somebody from getting an extra possession. But we look at it, we study it, we try to attack it the right way. We historically have been really good at that, and probably the worst we've ever been at it was the Notre Dame. We've never been outscored that much in that period without touching the ball.
Sorry about that. I had a little audio technical difficulties there, but I think I'm back up and running. Hopefully I'm on audio still. I hope you can get me. If you're in the chat, let me know that you can hear me, please. But anyhow, when I'm looking at Coach Smart talking about the middle 8, when you're a coordinator, it's very important. Possessions matter, especially if you got a team that's a heavy ground team that's going to run and try to run out clock while they're running the football and sustain drives, and you have 13, 15 play drives. That's a killer on your defense. But today's time, because there's so many explosives that are going on, honestly, that middle 8 is very important. I kind of looked at it from a standpoint. That's why you see people defer, as Coach Smart referred to. And a lot of people have always wondered that. Why do you want the football? Well, there's a lot of metrics that go into the fact that if you have those explosive plays during that time, you can actually have a 2-for-1 where you actually take the ball down the field, control the football for those 2 to 4 minute windows, be able to score, and then turn around, obviously, and get the ball in the second half and do the same thing. And typically the team who has better advantages in that as a team that's going to be successful. And, I really thought that I would add that to the context, because that's some of the metrics that a lot of people don't think about, but yet is a very successful metric in helping us perform well, do well. And for the most part, we have, for the majority of time, have been someone who is, allowing those metrics to help control how you dominate a game. And he was talking about how the Notre Dame game, that was actually a game where they actually got dominated during that middle 8 section because of, obviously, you saw Monroe Freeling getting, Gunner sacked in the short field for the score, and then they turn around in the second half, getting the football, and then take it for the kickoff return for a touchdown. So those 2 plays are explosives, 2 scores within that middle 8 that just cost us tons. And again, you see the successfulness of having those 2 plays happen in that middle 8 time frame really helped Notre Dame and catapult them in their win, even though they really didn't drive the ball or sustain drives during the game, and had the opportunity to still be successful. And what Gunner Stockton did that day was good enough to win a ball game. And unfortunately, that middle 8, I think, was something that really hurt us during that time. But it is a concept that they use. It is a metric that they use. I think it's very important. 225 girl, I see here. I'm not a big fan of going for it on 4th unless it's necessary. And also when it's almost halftime, instead of taking the knee, they get off plays. I saw enough of that last year. I can understand that because, typically you got to look at what side of the field you're on, where you're on the plus or the negative side. And you got to look at tendencies and how you feel about the game. There's a lot of logistics that go into it on 4th down plays and being able to go for it, but it also helps sustain a lot of drives as well. And, that's why the middle 8 is something of very much importance. Now, the next question is about secondary, and I wanted to tie that in, obviously, because we're talking about the secondary tonight. And this was a question asked to Kirby in his press conference.
Kirby, how do you evaluate what you've seen from Daniel Harris and Ellis Robinson this preseason?
I think both players have got tremendously better. I think Donte's done a really good job with all the corners, but those guys, Demello has gotten better and made more plays and tackled well. Dom and Jonte as young players, both getting better. Dalen has probably a little bit lightened rep load in terms of multiple positions, learning different things, but still playing. And he didn't go through spring, so it made it where, okay, he had to get back to competing and challenging and doing things. But those guys have done a tremendous job, and both the 2 you mentioned have gotten better throughout the year.
Now, as we start to look into defensive personnel, the one thing that everybody has kind of been focused on here lately is Ellis Robinson going to take the chair from Daniel Harris? Now, I'm going to tell you this. As you go out as a coach, it's really tough sometimes to deal with the complexity. And I can imagine for the University of Georgia D1 school, all the competition that goes into that, the millions of dollars that are being paid to the coaching staff. And you have to go out every day and you have to use a scrutinous detail of things from what you see on film, what you see on tape, the consistency, their technique, who's executing when they're getting certain amount of plays, how they look in pass coverage. Are they doing the right things? Are they cerebral? Can they line up correctly? Can they outperform the other person who's trying just as hard to fight for that position? It's been a long time thinking that Daniel Harris and Dalen Everett were going to be your starting 2 corners, but I'm beginning to feel like that Ellis Robinson is going to be pushing Daniel for that spot. I know that there's been whispers about him playing with the one, seeing on pictures, you can definitely see him in the 1 groups. But, Ellis just has a very unique personality. I got a chance to meet him this offseason before they went into fall practice, and just a very quiet demeanor, very humble kid. And, just from listening to him talk, he was hungry. He was excited about this opportunity. And this is one of those things where, like, if Daniel Harris ends up getting his seat overtaken by Ellis Robinson, I don't know if he gives it back. But I'm going to tell you this, there's going to be a dogfight, pardon the pun there, in a phone booth of those 2 guys fighting for that position, for that cornerback position. But what I love about it is Coach Smart said something about Demello Jones. And I think he's the one that gets left out of the equation a lot of times when we're talking about these 3 corners fighting for 2 spots. I think Demello Jones fits in there somewhere as well. We're going to see them rotate, I think, through the course of the 2 games, through Marshall and Austin Peay. There's no doubt about that we will see that. And Demello Jones might be one that we're also talking about with a little chatter at the water cooler on Monday mornings when we see their performances. And we got to stay humble, even though I hope we grow and we do see the chemistry of what we want in our defensive and offensive personnel, and we score points, and we obviously hold the offense from scoring points, and we see good, consistent ball games. But we got to stay grounded in that too, because we should go out and beat those 2 teams handedly. what I like is that it gives us the opportunity to preface going to Neyland Stadium and playing in a very hostile environment in Neyland Stadium against Tennessee. Regardless of our history and what we have done against Tennessee, Neyland Stadium is one of the top-notch stadiums to play in, even though we tend to make it vacate by halftime. But again, you got a lot of guys playing there that wasn't playing 2 years ago. And so this is almost like a different team that we're going to be lining up against, and they've got to be able to take on those pressures as well. So it's not necessarily, you can't just rely on the history of what you've done against Tennessee over the last, 8 to 9 years. You've got to be able to take that team and go out there and execute, and having these 2 games to lead up to it could give some, the confidence in what we want to be able to see, because we finally got some of these guys on tape. Now, before I break down my actual defensive personnel that I'm going to show you here in a second that I pre-recorded, I wanted to talk about these 2 gentlemen right here up on the defensive line. Even though I know we're talking about secondary, I think these are 2 guys that we are going to see more of than less of as these games progress, because the defensive line, Coach Trey Scott's going to be rotating these guys in, and that would be the 2 inside guys, your nose, your head up 0, your 4 eyes that shift to 5 techniques when you've got the jack walked up. And as Brent said, realistically, even though we are a base 3-4, we actually will rotate into a 4-2-5. We have to stay in a 4-2-5 nickel because we have so many teams that want to run the football that also pass with the RPOs that we have. So it ends up adjusting to what's called a 4-2-5. That's why he mentioned that, because we do have that outside linebacker walked up on the edge as an end type player with the defensive line bumped in that situation. When you're looking at this, I like this question that just popped up. How many true freshmen will make a major contribution on defense, from Jay Walk there? I appreciate that. I'm looking at, if you look at all the groupings that you have, I would say more than likely you're going to see these 2 right here being the first 2 that we have an opportunity to see more than less as the year progresses, and that is J.J. Hanne and you got Elijah Griffin. Elijah Griffin, a lot of people want to compare him to Jalen Carter. Don't compare him to Jalen Carter. Let him be Elijah Griffin. But I know he's been harassing the backfield a lot in the 2 scrimmages, a lot of whispers about him, a very quiet confidence, I know. And I'm sure we're going to see him as a rotator, either in Christen Miller's spot there, maybe in that 5-eye close to the jack, or even possibly over at the weak side 5 as well, where Gabe Harris and, those kind of guys you're going to see at that position because of his ability to move in space. Very strong kid. I think he has the ability to do that as well. We could possibly see him in any one of those rotations across the board. But J.J. Hanne's the one that's just been the quiet assassin. The kid from Germany has a blue hat on, which we know is the fire, passion, and energy model that they are using. And, what I've noticed is that he's never lost it. Every time you see him, he's got the blue hat on. Coach Smart talked about it in the presser. He's bringing a lot of actual passion and fire and energy, as you know, that relentless effort that you want to see from someone who's just hungry, man. He wants to get out there and attack and do his job and do it right. So there's no way in the world I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't think we see him some as well out there. He is one that I actually don't mention in this actual pre-record that I'm about to show you here, but I think those 2 right now is the reason why I wanted to talk to you about them. That's going to contribute along with the rest of these gentlemen that I'm going to be speaking on as we move forward. As far as other true freshmen, I don't know really if you're going to see anybody. We're looking at a lot of guys from the transfer portal in at safety or seasoned vets at those safety position. KJ Bolden, now a year older at the free safety position. Janelle Aguero's in year 3 at the nickel position. You got Dalen Everett, a seasoned vet at senior, one of the corners, and obviously Demello Jones and Ellis Robinson and that crew have got 1 year under their belt as well. Even though Dominick Kelley had a good spring this year, I don't see him being someone that's going to necessarily be out there competing with the 2s. But I tell you this, one kid that they are talking about that I have heard whispers of, which is crazy to think because he was not even a mid-year, he came in during the summer, is Rashawn Dinkins. Now, when I did reviews on him, Rashawn Dinkins was one of those that just really stood out on tape. He looked really good. He was a thumper. He had great coverage skills. And like I said, when it comes down to it, when you see them transfer into the college level D1 at the University of Georgia under Kirby Smart's defense, you got to be very cerebral. The defense isn't easy. And, I've been hearing that he's been getting an opportunity to go in and rotate at some of that in the twos. So who knows? I mean, that could be another kid we're seeing just get some slight rotations while we're playing in the Marshall Austin P, because I think you're going to see some rotators in along with who that starting 11 is going to be. So whoever you see line up against Marshall, and that's going to be the first thing I'm seeing because I'm going to be at the game, I want to be able to look, okay, who's the starting 11, who's the first rotators. And that's going to be very special to see, because that's going to let you know who has basically built the confidence in all these assistant coaches and your head coach to be the guys that's going to go out and carry the carry the torch for, what we're going to see all season. But don't be surprised if we do see some rotators and some things change over the first two games as we lead up into Neyland and to play Tennessee. So here is my defensive breakdown of personnel, who I think is going to be your starters and who are the people who are going to be your main contributors and rotators in for your starting defense for UGA this year. So stay tuned. Welcome into the huddle. And what I'm going to show you here is basically the 4-2-5 that Brent was mentioning a while ago. When you look at a defensive scheme, Kirby and Coach Saban built from sort of the same cloth, and what they've done is they've modified from a 3-4 to basically a 4-2-5 because they play so much nickel coverage, which means that you add a fifth defender into the defensive scheme. And so that means the other outside linebacker is going to walk up to become sort of a four-man front and give you an even front, and you slide the front over. So, you've got an end or a tackle that's basically playing as a two head up over the guard. You have the other nose shifting to a two technique over the guard. And then your weak side tackle is going to be basically as a five technique on the outside eye of the tackle, which gives you the four-man front, two backers in the box with five defensive backs in the game, three safeties, two corners. So what I was wanting to show you is we move towards August 30th against Marshall. I do think that the first two games that we're playing against them in Austin P will be kind of an exhibition match between the personnel, because we've still got a lot of guys fighting in a phone booth right now. And I think there's a lot of these that are going to be settled over that two-game period headed into Neyland. And I think once we get to Neyland at Tennessee, we're going to see basically the starting 11. So I still think there's roughly about, we know there are going to be constant rotators at Jack and in the up front. But, and even at the Mike and the Money, which is the wheel linebacker where you see the little logo that looks like a dollar sign, I think you're still going to see some rotations in there, because we do have a lot of youngins that are solid across the front that are willing to, show what they can do. And I think they've earned that time based off what we've heard through Scrimmage 1 and Scrimmage 2. So I'm going to kind of go across the board first, because this is what me and Brent talked about earlier. Is at the corner position on the left-hand side, typically to the boundary side to the field side with the nickel. I think that's going to be either Ellis Robinson or Daniel Harris. I think those two guys right now are fighting in a phone booth. I know that Ellis Robinson got a lot of one reps the other day, but Daniel Harris got some too. And I know he got picked on because C.J. Wiley had a day. And so when you look at that, I think Daniel Harris was in all of those snapshots that were there. But, Daniel Harris also has been playing very well. He's been growing every year, sort of what we did with Dalen Everett through his growing pains as well. And I think him and Ellis are going to be rotating a lot. In fact, I wouldn't doubt it if they were probably 50-50 with their reps across the board at field corner. Over the top at free safety is going to be KJ Bolden. There's no doubt about it. Realistically, what I'm very curious about is how they rotate him out to look to who's going to be that next free safety look, because of the fact that he's grown into that position so quickly as a freshman, coming in now as a sophomore and having, the tendency to possibly already be All-American honors with what he's doing as a sophomore. But he's got to grow this year. It's going to be something that I'm not necessarily going to pin it to his shirt yet, but I do think he has the opportunity to be a very good free safety for us this year, one we can pin on, because he is very cerebral. He is very athletic. And he is very aggressive. He comes downhill with a vengeance. He strikes the match when he lights you up. And I really like his play at the free safety position. At the strong safety position, I think it's Jacorey Thomas's to lose. I know there's a lot of people pushing right now for that position. Jacorey Thomas, like I said, to me, is just going to fit the role that Coach Smart has always been dedicated to. Someone that is a veteran. He's seasoned, someone who's been there, got a ton of reps, and it's time for him to shine. If he can't do it, they're going to find somebody that can go there. But I know he's been fighting a lot with, you got Jaden Harris, you got Adrian Maddox. I think Adrian Maddox has been making some noise this fall. We had a lot from Zion Branch in the spring. There's going to be a lot of people fighting at that position along with the nickel position as well. We've also heard some things coming from Rashawn Dinkins, which I like him as a recruit coming in. But, I mean, when you're a new freshman, man, and he's not even a mid-year guy. He came in the summertime like, Nate did at running back last year. But I noticed that there's little whispers out there that he's doing a great job and even getting some reps with the twos right now. So, uniquely enough, I mean, he could be a name we're talking about as we move into the season. At the field corner on the other side, I think you're looking at Dalen Everett. Dalen's that steady guy that Brent mentioned a while ago, and I feel the same way. He's going to be dedicated to his craft. I think he's going to be a consistent blue-collar lunch pail kid every day that's going to come in and do his job, and you're just going to see consistency out of him, hopefully, throughout. But, I mean, Demello Jones could be another one that we're looking at rotating in at that corner position as well. Jonte Gilbert's been out there. Dominick Kelley had a great spring, had some good things happen to him in the spring due to the attrition of rotational players playing with the twos and with the threes. And I just see good things from that group right there. Now, the nickel position is something that's basically what Brent and I were talking about a while ago, that needs to be that hybrid player. He stays over the number 2 receiver. Typically, he's your strength defender. He's your leverage guy, outside in guy, but he's also got to be able to, when you're in cover 1 or you're in cover 2, he's going to have the number 2 man unless they're rolling a safety and bringing him on a blitz. But if he is in coverage, he's got to be able to cover a number 2 receiver. And I think what we're hearing is that Janelle Aguero's had a hell of an offseason, is going to be that guy, and basically it's going to be his position to give up. But I know those other guys we just mentioned at the strong safety position kind of fit that same mentality to play the nickel position. But again, it comes to the maturity of understanding, you may have a guy that's a thumper and can fight through a number 2 receiver and force defend, but you got to also have a guy that can run with a hip and run with these scat back type slot receivers. Think about that being like Sokovie White or Zachariah Branch as that number 2 receiver, and Janelle Aguero's got to cover him. So if there's anything I could say is that, at least, just like I've said in the past, Janelle's had excellent time to prepare covering a number 2 receiver, and he's been facing hella talent at that number 2 receiver position. So it's safe to say that I think Janelle's his position to give up, and hopefully he has a good year this year and stays injury free. Moving inside, you go to the money position, which is like the wheel inside linebacker. That's Raylen Wilson's to lose. I think you're going to have Justin Williams as well as Chris Cole. I wouldn't doubt if you see a little bit of Terrell Foster, AJ Kruah, and even some Zayden Walker as time goes on, as we start working into the 2s and the 3s. At the Mike position, CJ Allen, obviously. You're going to see Chris Cole behind him, but I wouldn't be surprised if you probably see Chris Cole up on the line playing a little bit of jack too, similar to what they've done with Chris Jones. Chris Jones was the same linebacker that came in with Chris Cole and Justin Williams, and they've moved him to that outside linebacker jack position. But, Coach Smart mentioned in his presser the other day that when they go stack, which is a 3-3 stack look in certain passing situations, that he actually plays that stack backer position. I wouldn't doubt we see Chris Cole in that situation as well, where you got Raylen at the money, you got CJ at the mic, and you've got Chris Cole at the jack position, stacked off the ball behind your end, and you've got a head up zero, head up over the, or outside I-5s for the ends, or the tackle positions per se. When you move across from left to right, we're going to start with the left side end, what I call kind of the weak side end. It's really a tackle, but we're going to call him a defensive end. But, I look at people like Joseph Jonier is probably going to be looking at that position right there. I wouldn't doubt it. Gabe Harris is definitely going to be that spot to fit. Gabe has had a great offseason. He's not being talked a lot about, but it's just because of the fact that I think he's showing consistency throughout the fall, and he's done a really good job in both of our scrimmages. I think it's Gabe's job to lose, and Gabe's got to show out this year. It's his time to make that money this year and show out and be that guy that we can count on the line of scrimmage to attack the run, but also be something that could be a disadvantage against passing schematics that you have. When you look at that nose, that guy that's typically going to be head up over the center, right now I've got him over on the left shaded because of the 4-2-5 look that I'm showing you here. I honestly think that it's probably Nnamdi Oboko. They got Josh Horton in there. I know they're probably looking at him more across at the other end or tackle position, but I think Nnamdi Oboko is the guy that they're probably going to be seeing a lot of in that rep position. I wouldn't doubt if Xavier McLeod probably gets some reps there too if they want a faster look. When it comes down to running downs, I think you've got to stick that guy in there. Somebody that's 325, 330 plus that's going to basically take on a center and be a two-gap guy. It's very important to understand. Moving across to that other end, it's lined up as a 2 technique right now over the guard. He'll sometimes be on the inside eye of the tackle, could even be head up on the tackle. That's Christen Miller. I think you've got a steady rotation of guys that can fit in that position as well, like Xavier McLeod, Josh Horton, Jordan Hall. And see, a lot of those guys can be rotational across the front too, because you don't necessarily always have to have a 340-plus guy that's sitting head up over the center, especially if you're looking at different down and distance situations. But, we're talking about all these guys. We got to see them come out and hunt. And I think through 2 games, they're going to solidify those positions up front. And not to mention, you got Griffin. Oh, my God, Elijah Griffin has done nothing but be talked about this entire fall, showing out. He is going to be a guy I think is going to be an automatic rotator as well. But what's nice about you're hearing all these names, I don't really see a lot of fall off from it. Josh Horton's having to learn the game. He's kind of probably going to be in the same situation that Xavier McLeod was last year, but Xavier McLeod has turned a corner. I think he's going to be a beneficial guy up front along with Christen Miller. Jordan Hall's got to stay healthy. He has yet to have a season where he has stayed healthy at that position, and it's sometimes tough to do because of all the wear and tear you get put on you. But, Jordan Hall, this is, again, that time where he's got to show up or he's going to start getting bypassed by those younger guys, and Griffin is definitely one that I think can fit that role. But, those are great names to throw across the board. Now you look at the jack position, Quintavious Johnson. I see Elo Madozi being in that position as well. Economom is another one that I think could fit there too. But because of the way I've heard through fall, I think it's really when you're looking at the oppo positions of that weak side end or tackle in the 5 technique and the jack, you're going to be seeing Gabe Harris looking across from Quintavious Johnson. Elo Madozi, again, is another guy that we really like to see. But, he's got to be able to come into SEC football and be able to take on a pulling guard from the SEC. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he's going to attack the run. There's no doubt to me he's got the bend, he's got the whip, he can get low and get around and run the hoop, and I think attack the quarterback and be a great defensive pass rusher. But we've also got to see him be able to squeeze the down and take on a guard trying to kick him out too in that situation, and we've got to see what he can do as he gets more reps, live reps against other teams, and that's the excitement about this group right here. Chris Jones is also another one that could be added to that group as well. But across the front, I feel good about our personnel. It's just, like I said, a lot of unproven talent that we've got to see go out there and show out. And I think just like across the board with your secondary and with your linebacker positions, after Austin Peay, I really feel like you're going to have an opportunity to know who that true starting 11 is going to up to Knoxville in Tennessee. So, if you look across the board at our defense, I think there's solidarity across the board. You've got veteran seasoned vets at the inside linebacker position. You've got a growing young man who's now, going into his 3rd year at the nickel. Dalen Everett over at corner, solid seasoned veteran. You've got a guy that's a rising star at free safety. I think what you're going to see is whoever comes out of that cornerback fight in the phone booth on the left-hand side to the field is going to be the best fit, and we're just going to have to see how that comes from practice reps and continually to get better in live reps, because the way I look at it, when you get live reps, you better by God execute, because that's what shows everybody, that lets you know that, hey, we've got the right guy out there doing his job. Jacorey Thomas, same thing. I agree with Brent. He's going to have to lose his job and show he can't do it before we're looking at putting another guy out there. But I do think beneficially there's a lot of guys getting reps in that position, and whoever they decide to put there is going to be the one that I think Coach T-Rob will really will be trustworthy of. Up front, we're going to have a solid rotation of about 8 to 9 guys. By the time it gets done with these first 2 with Marshall and Austin Peay, we are going to find a solid front 4. And this is what we're going to be seeing a lot of. There will be rotations where the jack will rotate out and you'll go to a 6-man look where you got a 3-3 stack. It's just a difference in what they're doing versus the pass versus the run, to leave a linebacker in the game that's a more athletic kid instead of having more, down lineman pieces. But, the excitement is in those kids finally have risen to the top, and we're going to get the chance to see them shine when it comes to lining down and actually getting some live reps on tape. So that is my haul right now for our defensive group of 11 to 14 to 15. Actually, it could be all the way up into the 20s with your rotation of guys. But, this year is going to be an exciting year because we're finally getting to see all that talent come into the game and come to fruition and be able to show us what they can do. And the ones who execute, the ones who stay consistent, the ones who prove in practice that they're ready to play are the one that Coach Smart, Coach T-Rob, Coach Williams, Coach Shue, and Coach Scott are going to put on the field. So that's the defensive look of who I think is going to be your starting 11 and the rotators that'll be going in with it. All right. So as you can see, that's my defensive personnel breakdown. As you saw, JJ Hanne was not one that I included in with that pre-record. That's why I talked about him before. But I think him and Elijah Griffin are going to be another rotator up in that position where Christen Miller is at. Possibly even if you want a quicker front where you don't necessarily know if you're going to have a run down or a pass down, that you have someone at that zero technique over the nose that could play. And Elijah Griffin could actually fit that as well because of his quickness, but still, though, I think we've got tons of potential, ton of opportunities, and it's exciting to see as we break down the defensive secondary and now looking at the defensive personnel, who we're going to have out there on Saturday against Marshall and who will be rotating through as we lead up to those Tennessee Volunteers up at Neyland Stadium. Now, as you can see here, I know a lot of you have probably seen in the chat where I've been giving you guys a talking to about the super chats. I've been always trying to set goals because I wanted to give you an opportunity to get subscribed. If you go to my actual website at coachhayeshudl.com, there's a place for you to put in your email address for a confirm where you can have one free entry towards free gear. And I was going to show you some of the things that you can actually get. If you do the super chat, which is a $5 donation or more, you get entered in 3 times. And for every super chat you put in, that doubles your entries. So it could be a 6x, 9x, 12x. And of course, I've got a little wheel that I'm going to put you in for the probability and the statistics of it. I'm going to do a live drawing on August 29th at 5 p.m. on a live show that I'm doing precursor going to the game on Saturday. And I'm going to have 3 winners that's going to get some free merch. I'm also going to look at doing another drawing after the game Saturday night live. And I'm thinking about doing that actually at the game while I'll be there, live streaming, doing stuff through social media, but of course, join the game and being a part of that camaraderie and do another drawing for a few other items as well. So what I wanted to do real quick was to show you some of the things that I'm looking to give away here. And I don't know if you can see this or not. I'm going to try my best to hold this up so you can see it. This is a Tyke Smith signed authentic jersey. You can see the sticker on there for the authenticity. This is one of my favorites that I'm definitely going to be giving away to one of my winners for the raffle. I have also a red Nate Frazier signed jersey as well. I don't know if I can hold that up right or not. Also, authenticity is there, signed by Nate Frazier himself. That will be another one that'll be going in as well to the drawing for people who are interested in that. And I also have another one here that I wanted to show you too. This is kind of an old school, but you got a Rosemy Jack Saint signed jersey as well. And so I hope you can still hear me through all this. That'll be another one for the giveaway too. And as you can see behind me here, I have a Nate Frazier black jersey that says Straight Outta Compton on it because, as you know, Nate's from California. And then I also have, I can't really see my hand back there, but Trevor Etienne signed jersey as well. I also have a couple of mini helmets left to give out too, but I probably have in total of about 20 jerseys that I'll be giving away over the next few weeks as I do my live shows for entries into it. So if you get the opportunity and you want to, look into just a free entry, because when you subscribe with your email to my website, it's free. There's no obligation to it. It's just going to basically take all of my work and centralize it to one hub so that you have the ability to go check that out when you get a chance to. And also too, I am going to be, giving you the opportunity through the super chats, through YouTube and through the live shows, to have the opportunity to put more entries in to give you better chances of getting that drawing in favor of your name. So anyway, that being said, that's at coachhayeshudl.com. And remember, Hudl is spelled Hudl for that. I do appreciate you tuning into the show tonight as I close in a little over an hour again tonight. I wanted to talk real quick about what the SEC has decided to do, which a lot of people are kind of up in flames about that because they think we kind of catered to the Big Ten in that regard. And I don't really see it that way, to tell you the truth. What I see in this situation is the opportunity for you to have a 3+6 model plus a out of conference game, which we know is going to be the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. But now we get 3 schools that have the ability to, we know we're going to have every year. So I think that's going to pull us in, just like I have here on the model, that we're going to have South Carolina, we're going to have Florida, and we're going to have Auburn as our 3 non-negotiables. That'll be who we play every year. and then we'll have 6 that rotate. So who knows? We may still have the opportunity to finally go play Texas A&M out in College Station. We can always dream to do that, because that's what the properties of this, SEC model was. Now that we've, basically blown up and inflated to 16 teams, we should have the opportunity, hopefully, to play all the different programs that are in the SEC as well. So maybe that'll happen in the process too. But I see what's happening here is the negotiations that now the SEC creates sort of a power model for the ability to have some control in what they're going to do in changing the playoff structure and the playoff model for next year. Secondly, I think that it's going to basically create now a super team concept that we're probably going to see this happen, I would say, within the next 3 to 4 years, where because of this model and actually adhering to it, that it creates the ability for us to see the model that, everybody's kind of wanting to go to, where you're probably going to see anywhere from a 30 to a 35, sort of like a super team conference. And I wouldn't doubt that that's going to be something that happens pretty soon. But, you got the 3+6, and there's going to be some traditions that are going to be broken. I think us in Tennessee is going to be someone that, even though I live in Northwest Georgia, so the way people hate Florida, which I hate Florida too, I hate Tennessee fans just as equal. So if you're a Tennessee fan watching, I'm sorry, I'm probably sure you're not, due to the fact of what content I'm covering right now. But it's one of those things that I can't stand Tennessee. I would really wish we had them as our 3. But, it comes down to it. I think we're going to see South Carolina, Florida, and Auburn as our 3 constants, and then we'll have the 6 rotators in there, which I'm sure Tennessee is probably going to be a constant rotator as well with that process. So we'll just see how things go with that. But, I think this gives leverage back to the SEC to help with the playoff structure of what they're looking at, which Kirby Smart in his presser says, if it's done correctly, I'm for the expansion of the playoffs. And I'm kind of for it too, but yet it has to be structured correctly. If it's structured incorrectly, it could be just a massive debacle. But it gives the leverage to the SEC. It also gets the opportunity for us to create, if we're going to have this super conference that's eventually going to be created, that we have some equality with the Big Ten. Uniquely enough, though, that team, I think it's kind of nice when you're looking at bringing in another team to play that's at, in the conference, where you get a chance to play an LSU, or you get a chance to play, like I said, Texas A&M or whatever it may be. And you're excluding someone like Charlotte out of this schedule this year, kind of, if you looked at it from this year's schedule. And, that's what makes our conference great. We were already at the top tier playing with an 8-team schedule, and the Big Ten wanted to cry that we weren't playing the 9-game schedule when only 2 to 3 teams really had any weight in that conference. Every other team, I think you could take Mississippi States of the world, the Vanderbilts of the world, and they would go compete in that conference with no problem, if you excluded probably Oregon, Michigan, and Ohio State now. And, you can't really, it's hard to say Oregon being in the Big Ten, which blows me away anyway. But, those are the 3 that you see over there. Penn State, to me, is going to be the redheaded stepchild till they prove something. They continue to every year figure out a way to lose ball games. And, it's just like I said, I think the Big Ten is top heavy. Their bottom tier teams don't have any competition in them, to me, where it shows that playing that 9-game slate that they've had, they don't hold water to what the SEC is doing. And I'll stay on that hill till the day I die. Now, adding that 9th game in conference, they have nothing to whine about anymore. Plus, it gives us leverage. And I like to see the traditions of bringing Auburn back into the mix. We may lose a traditional game in the process, but I think it fits the modality of us being a successful team going forward. So, I was looking at some of these questions here as I've talked about this. And again, if you've got any questions, you want to put it into the chat. I've got a good amount of people watching tonight, which is awesome. I appreciate you tuning in and talking with me. I'll go as long as you want to, because typically I want to stay around an hour's worth of time. Typically over an hour. I've got, we've got to go do our thing. And I know on a Thursday night, you got other things to do than sit here and look at my ugly face in the camera. But I look at this question. I get UF and Auburn, but South Carolina's a little surprising. I thought Tennessee or Ole Miss. Well, if you look at Tennessee's not going to be without. You're looking at Vanderbilt, obviously, is an in-state rival. Florida and Alabama are their 2 big rivalries. That's something that they've had on CVS for a long period of time. I'm kind of with you on that. I think Tennessee needs to be that team as well, but they're not going to take those 3 away from Tennessee. And unfortunately, their storied history between those 3 is just going to have to stay the same. If we're going to have a South Carolina team, if it's not Clemson, because they stay in the ACC, I would love it if Clemson came over to the SEC. I think that would be a great rival to have with Clemson. Clemson, but if not, the next best in South Carolina, and having them as our 3 traditional, because that's been something up to this past year, and not playing South Carolina. So, putting that situation, you got to think about it too. It's a 3+6 model. So even in that, there's going to be 6 teams that we're going to be rotating with. And I think Tennessee will stay in that mixture of 6 a lot because of our locale and everything. And plus, it's a big game. Me being in Northwest Georgia, I want to play Tennessee every year because I hate that color. I hate that stadium. I hate Tennessee with a passion. I can't stand their fight song or everything about them. I cannot stand. And a lot of people feel that way about Florida. I feel that way about Tennessee. I hate them all. I want to beat all of them. But Tennessee fans, to me, most obnoxious human beings in the world. And you know who you are, Tennessee fans, because like I said, I've had to live around them my entire life because we got so many of them down here in the Northwest Georgia area. And Jay, I got another comment here for you. The Big Ten avoid playing each other. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, look at the bottom of their run. You got Maryland and Rutgers, Northwestern, Iowa, that's been terrible for the last, it seems, decade with good defense but no offense. If you look at the bottom tier or the bottom third of their conference, honestly, golly, the bottom half of their conference, I think Mississippi State, I think Vanderbilt. If you look at the bottom teams in our tier right now, and you take those teams, I think they go over to the Big Ten and they could compete with basically at least half to maybe the upper half, and compete very well against them. I know Vandy seems to think they're high on the hog this year and what they're doing with Diego Pavia and what he's got. And, that kid's going to, I love his competitiveness, but he's got to go out there now and play ball and execute. So he's been talking a big game through SEC media days. Now he's got to perform. Him beating Alabama last year and obviously taking Texas down to the wire. I think they've got a solid football team, but again, you've got to go out there and perform on the field. But I do think if you compare it to the Big Ten, now that we've gone to the 9-game conference, Big Ten has no leg to stand on, and we'll just see how things play out this year. So if you've got any questions, I'll be glad to take them here for the next couple of minutes. If you don't, then like I said, we'll close up the show. I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. I've got 40 watching tonight on the show. That's probably most concurrent amount of listeners that I've had at one time, and I do appreciate you being on here. Even if you're not commenting, I hope you enjoy the show. Had the chance to have Brent Rollins on tonight to talk defensive backfield. I'm actually going to be going to the other side of the ball next week before we, go between the hedges and tee off against Marshall. I'm going to be doing the offensive line breakdown and putting the tight ends in there with it just for that purpose, and have the opportunity to talk about them more in depth. The last one I'll be doing is the defensive line breakdown, and I'm kind of glad that it's coming after the Marshall game, where I'll be able to kind of talk about where those guys are at and be able to have some film maybe on the ones that they start and who the rotators are. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Going to be having guests on the show to be helping me, just like Brent did tonight with the defensive back. Let's see here. If you put Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon in the SEC, how you think they would fare? That would be a great question to pontificate upon, because that to me is your upper echelon of the Big Ten. Okay. So I'm going to put that back up here real quick. So I'm sitting here thinking about it. Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon. Okay. I think Oregon had more success this year, their first year in the Big Ten, than Penn State's been trying to have with Franklin under the helm for a long period of time. And if you want to put those as the big four, because Penn State obviously made the playoffs along with Indiana. But again, Indiana, I think they're a one-hit wonder. We'll see what happens this year with them, but it's because of the schedule that they play versus who they play pull them into the playoffs, because we have objective people in the college football playoff committee that's creating these scenarios about, the win factor instead of who they're actually playing in those wins. Eventually, we've got to change those logistics. It's got to come down to more strength of schedule. Then they're going to add this computer module they talked about. I'm really interested to see what happens with that situation, and to determine the fact of who those guys are going to be in the 12 at the end. But until they realize that those kind of teams like that are at the bottom of the feeder, and all of a sudden they're able to have some dominance and win in their conference, but they're beating other teams that absolutely are terrible. All right. It comes down to it. You're going to see those teams fall on their face. And, I think Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State would be highly competitive. Oregon too in the SEC. But, when you start talking about bringing those guys over, and it's not even longer the Big Ten anymore, isn't it? Like there are 18 teams in the Big Ten now. There's 16 teams in the SEC. Guess what? That's part of that super conference I was talking about earlier. And that's what it's going to get to when you're going to see, because what you're trying to do is you want to benefit the patrons who love the game. You want to see them have the ability to go out there and have great football every weekend. That's what brings in the money. That's what brings in the viewers, and vice versa. And I think that's what you're going to eventually start seeing. I told you, in the next 3 to 4 years, I wouldn't doubt it if we're looking at a conference of like super teams, a 30 to 35 team conference, and Big Ten teams, and the SEC will be definitely part of that. And we'll see what happens when all that comes to fruition. But until then, the SEC still dominates going to this 9-team scheduled conference. And, now Big Ten can't whine about that anymore. I think it helps the SEC. A lot of people say, man, that's a really hard road to travel when you got 9 scheduled SEC opponents, and then you got to play in the SEC championship. Then you got to play in the playoffs. But I mean, to me, the way I look at it, if you're going to be the best team in the world, in the nation, not the world, best team in the nation, you got to win. You got to go out there and execute and beat all the teams that they suspect could beat you. If you go out there and you win, you shut everybody up every week. That's the reason why I love Coach Smart's mentality towards each week. We're going to prepare each week for every team, because every team's going to bring their best to try to beat us. And you got to be able to go out there and shut them up and show out and out execute them and win ball games. And that's the way you shut people up. You got to go out there and win ball games. Got a lot of people in there now. Oh my goodness. Let's see. I got who's the next guest coach? Oh my goodness. You won't believe who I got coming in next. I'm excited for my next guest. I'll be relaying that later on there. But it's going to be someone to be talking about offensive line stuff. And I will be displaying that and disclosing that information a little bit later. See what we got here. The SEC is the elite version of the Big 12. I'm not really sure where you're going with that situation. It'd probably be a good idea to elaborate on that a little bit for me. The Big Ten is the elite version of the ACC. I get what you're saying, basically out of the Power Four now. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, when you look at what you have here, I really just hate it for the fact of with the settlement and everybody having the allocated funds now up to the $20.5 million, which eventually will change out. You're going to see that money number rise. I really feel sorry for the teams that are non-revenue builders. You're going to have football, basketball, baseball, pretty much the big three that's always going to be bailing out your lower teams. And you've got a UCLA and a USC that's traveling all the way across the country to play a golf match at Rutgers or, at Penn State or whatever. I mean, those are the programs that are going to struggle as we move forward. So with that being said, I think the biggest issue that we are facing going forward is what's going to happen with this super conference that we're talking about. I think, again, we're looking at the opportunity for leverage, and it gives us a little bit of power back. And a lot of people said that we sort of succumbed to what the Big Ten wanted us to do. I think it was going to happen anyway. And in that process, it gives us leverage. Greg Sankey knows what it does for us. It knows what it's going to do. ESPN and the money that was probably put into this situation, I'm sure fueled it and powered it, because money always does. But eventually we're going to see something that is very close to, the super conference that we're talking about moving forward. But I like it just due to the fact that we know we got 3 that are non-negotiables. We got 6 that are rotating, and Tennessee will definitely be one of those rotators, which I think is important. And then we got 1 out of conference, which will always be Georgia Tech. All right, so we got a troll in here, so I'm seeing what I've got here. I appreciate you helping me out with that. I better not hear Kurt Signetti say anything about the SEC scheduling again. Yeah, I agree with you, man. There's no way in the world they can't say anything now. They have no leg to stand on whatsoever now in the process of trying to say that we're going to one-up you or we have something, a little bit better. Because even when they were in the 9-game conference schedule, and we were still dealing with the 8, there was no doubt that we were still more of the supreme conference. We were. We have more teams across the conference that do more than what they have, period. But anyway, a lot of them in here, I've got a lot of comments coming through, and I appreciate it, guys. I'll be on here as long as y'all want to talk. And UCLA was on the verge of dropping most programs a couple of years ago. I agree. I mean, all it's going to do is add stress. You're adding stress to a lot of those non-revenue teams that are trying to allocate funds, and they're having to exhaust funds from programs that are making a lot of money. And that's something that puts a lot of stress on your academic or on your athletic programs. You're going to see that happen over a period of time where a lot of teams are going to have to drop it. And if they don't figure out a way with this, they're going to end up, causing more harm than good, because you're going to have these non-revenue teams that are going to have to phase out because they don't have the monies nor the allocation of funds to be able to support their programs going forward. But anyhow, The one thing that I want to make sure that everybody is aware of is that Georgia football is basically just right over a week away from getting the chance of seeing our guys dressed up in the red and black and getting them silver breeches and getting out there and taking care of business. And when all this speculation of who's starting, who's not starting, who's going to be your rotators are all going to be taken care of. And it's funny that here we go. I'll take this from you, Garrett. If regardless, I'll let you kind of have a leg to stand on here. You actually fully agree with me. I appreciate that. I can always take someone agreeing with me. Lastly, here, I'm going to take this last one. I don't want to see a super league. We might as well just mimic the NFL, the NFC, and AFC. I agree with you on that, but I mean, I think it's inevitable. I think we're going to eventually see that over a period of time. If we don't, we're going to see those teams phase out over a period of time, and you're not going to see the sort of the stream of what you want to be able to see with like an Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. We're constantly going to be bickering about which conference is better with how they are misaligned and what's going on, unless they go back. They're never going to go back and redistribute out to the Pac-12. And we're going to be looking at just the remnants of just programs that are going to fizzle out if we don't have the opportunity to create something that allows some conformity and create a transition that is fluid for every program that's out there as part of their institutional framework. So I agree with you. There's probably more misknown or unknown than what we do know right now, but it comes down to it. We're going to have to see as time goes on, because they're going to try to do what's best for each program, because each program wants to be successful. They want to maintain as many athletic programs as they have, and they want to see people come in and play for their program. So who knows? I could sit here all day long and debate of whether or not we are going to a super league or whether we're going to stay in conferences with a Power Four. But because of what we did and what we see today with us going to a 9-game conference schedule, I do think this sets us up for looking at something like that down the road, and it's probably going to be sooner rather than later. Lastly, yeah. And, that's something that I think about too with Texas. I sit here and think to myself, what a nice benefactor they've had being into not only coming from the Big 12 and making the run through the playoffs, and then come to the SEC with a very weak SEC schedule and make the playoffs. And then they got a guy named Manning that shows up to be their quarterback, and it's all of a sudden they're like a gift from God. And it's just something. It's the same thing. It's about time for them to shut up and go out there and do what they're supposed to do, or they're going to fall on their face, one or the other. We're either going to see the team that everybody's talked about, or they're not. But still, the schedule they've got, I mean, other than some of the teams few teams that they're playing, and Georgia, one of them, to me, their SEC schedule is relatively, not as abrasive as a lot of other ones are. Their strength of schedule through the SEC is not as strong as other teams as well. But, it's the same thing. They've got to go out there and prove, and we'll see what happens with that. I'm for the fact of Texas wanting the brand of the SEC. They've got the SEC patch now, the logo. So go out there and perform. Don't sit there and talk a big talk. The brand is what's getting the talk. The team is not getting what's proven. All right. And I think Arch believes that. I don't think he really believes in all this hype. I think he's always tried to keep it on a DL basically, but the media is not going to leave him alone. And they're going to have to go out there. They got high expectations. So this is what I'll conclude with. I am definitely for where we're at right now as the number 5 team in the nation, coming in under the radar. Coach Smart couldn't have asked for a better scenario than what we're dealing with right now. And that is to be the number 5 team in the preseason, coming in with this unproven talent. But we know that we have a high blue chip ceiling, and we're going to have kids showing out. And there's a quiet confidence that we have in the locker room, I believe, right now. As I said at the beginning of the show, Coach Smart circling the wagons. He's beginning to retract a little bit. You're beginning to see just sort of game mode beginning to click in. And I think there's great things to uphold as we move into the Marshall game here in just a little over a week. So anyway, guys, I can't thank y'all enough. I mean, it's been awesome to be with you tonight for this long. I've just got over an hour and a half in time. I do appreciate Brent joining the show with me tonight. I thank you for your patience with me as I move through all of the particulars of the different segments. I love talking football. I love the fact that I'm going to be back finally once we start getting into season to breaking down the X's and O's for you as well. So stay tuned to those. If you did get a chance, even though I don't think I met my goal tonight on the super chats, but still make sure if you get a chance, go into at coachhayeshudl.com and enter in for a one-time entry fee for for your chance for free merch. And I look forward to just getting to speak with you and talk with you further. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave comments. I will be able to chat with you all the time. I enjoy the time that I have. You guys are what make what I do special, and I appreciate you tremendously. With everything being said, I really do appreciate you. I want you to, have a good night. And as always, God bless, take care, and go Dogs.